Of all the various kinds of UFO-related phenomena that have materialized, the so-called light spheres certainly hold a particularly important place. These objects have recently gained greater popularity, thanks in part to the studies conducted by Dr. Elьtьо Хазельхоффом. According to his theory, the light spheres could be the cause behind crop circles, with which they have often been associated. But the spheres began to appear many years ago. During the Second World War, airplane pilots on both sides of the war reported on several occasions that they were flanked by mysterious light spheres during their missions. These spheres could execute maneuvers that would have been impossible for the pilots' airplanes. Their many attempts to outstrip the spheres and avoid pursuit were unsuccessful, and in fact, the spheres often seemed to anticipate the maneuvers of even the most experienced pilots. They appeared in all areas involved in the war, from Europe to the Far East, and it was soon clear that they were not secret enemy weapons. They were given the name Foo Fighters, from a corruption of the French word feu. The objects appeared to be glowing, bright spheres in colors ranging between red, orange, yellow, white, and green. The instruments aboard the planes experienced malfunctioning when these mysterious craft appeared, and once radar technology became operative, the pilots realized that the craft were not detected by their radar devices.
El fenómeno de las esferas se inicia en la Segunda Guerra Mundial.
The phenomenon of flying spheres begins to manifest during the Second World War, during the air attacks among American, English, German, and of course Italian and Japanese air forces.
Cada una de estas fuerzas aéreas tuvo reportes y supo de la presencia.
They all reported the presence of these spheres. Each of them thought they were secret enemies' weapons. And so they were frightened as they moved with great freedom. They could come very close to or move away from airplanes, almost passing between them.
The committees established by both the Allies and the Germans to investigate the phenomenon did not officially reach any serious result. Initially, the pilots and their superiors were bewildered and understandably afraid that the spheres were secret enemy weapons. They later became accustomed to this presence, considering it innocuous. According to the pilot's statements, the objects were filmed on several occasions, but the films have since been kept in secret military archives. Footage filmed by random witnesses began to appear in the 1950s. These films showed the objects both alone and in groups, and what we see in the images confirms the statements made by the military pilots. In this film, we see that the cameraman has located a sphere hovering in the sky and an airplane flying nearby. Amongst the first to suggest that these craft may be extraterrestrial was the Polish-American George Adamski, the first and most famous of the contactees, that is, human beings who come into repeated contact with beings presumed to have come from other worlds. Adamski declared that these flying objects were remote-controlled surveying probes that extraplanetary spaceships had launched into Earth's orbit for study purposes. Their shape could be spherical or disc-like, and their size could vary from just a few centimeters to several meters in diameter. He filmed a number of them in flight. Over the course of the years, further films added to the wealth of footage showing these mysterious craft, giving a sense of continuity to their mysterious presence and origins. This film was recorded in January 1976 over Wiltshire during an experimental Concorde flight. It was filmed by British Airways staff working on another plane. the maneuvers that the white sphere executes are perfect examples of what the military pilots had described during the Second World War. The object flies beside the Concorde, glides along its windows, and then, suddenly, darts upward at top speed. In recent years, these probes have come ever closer to cities, at times flying literally right above the rooftops, sometimes even closer to our streets. Amongst the most significant material in which these probes appear is this video, recorded in the Capo Redondo area of São Paulo, Brazil, on January 2nd, 1998. This video is all the more interesting because the object was sighted very close to an inhabited area. The object, which measures approximately 20 centimeters, made no noise and was found about 200 meters from the young man who witnessed it, Alan Bruno de Oliveira. A remarkable number of witnesses saw the apparatus undergo transformations. This was made possible by its proximity to the witnesses, as well as the duration of the sighting. Over the course of half an hour, the probe completed several transformations above the houses of Capo Redondo. The movements that the little craft made suggest that a form of intelligence is driving it, halting sharply, and suddenly changing direction and speed. It seems to have its own propulsion mechanism. These particular flying objects were also sighted in Mexico. This is one of the first of these fascinating videos. In Mexico City, while a squadron of military helicopters was being filmed during a public show, an apparently metal object unexpectedly passed between the terrestrial craft, to the amazement of the pilots, who later bore witness to the event. This is a solid object. We can see that it stands out clearly against the dark outline of one of the helicopters. It makes a diagonal descending trajectory, and it is most certainly equipped with its own propulsion system, because it flies through the strong vortex of air created by the helicopter's rotary blades without experiencing any disturbance. Moreover, this demonstrates that the object cannot be a sounding balloon, a hot air balloon, or any other kind of gas-filled object. Now, we'll observe one of these light spheres gracefully floating near the slopes of the volcano Popocatépetl, southeast of Mexico City. This document shows another one of these spheres flying at a very low altitude above the Mexican city of Guadalajara. The two videos of this particular type of phenomenon that we're about to show were recorded in Mexico City in 1998, the first just 2 days before the second. In these videos, we see an unidentified flying object in broad daylight, filmed on different days near the same building. In the first video, the object hovers by the side of the building. When the witness zooms in, we can clearly see the remarkable brightness of the rosy color that the sphere emanates. In the second video, recorded 2 days later, we initially see a dark object cross the sky. After a brief stretch, it begins to descend, and we can perceive a change in its brightness. After a slow and indecisive glide, we see it move once again along the side of the same building, shown in the previous video. Then it rises again and slowly moves away. Of the cases of UFO contact that have come to light in recent years, one of the most interesting from a photographic perspective is the case involving Raúl Domínguez of Mexico. Domínguez has photographed classic flying saucers as well as small spherical ships like those we've seen in these videos. The objects seem to be made of metal. Domínguez reported that he watched the objects suddenly become transparent when an airplane approached them, only to return to a metallic state when the earthly craft moved away. One of the first films to show the spheres in a group was made in the United States during the 1950s. The phenomenon reappeared in Mexico in the 1990s and in a rather widespread manner. The large number of objects shown in these videos caused quite a stir. This video was recorded in Mexico City on October the 27th, 1992 by Ulises Trujillo. These formations seem to represent the constellations. In Mexico, they were dubbed flotillas. In this short video, one of the objects increases speed and, flying vertically, passes by a slower object. The presence of light spheres is not limited to the skies over our planet. They have also been sighted in space and filmed during both American and Russian missions. Extraordinary early testimony was provided by the American astronaut James McDivitt. While flying with the Gemini 4 in June 1965, he succeeded in filming a sphere that had approached his ship.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object. Geometry of it was sort of like a beer can or a Coke can with a pencil sticking out one of the round edges at about a 45-degree angle.
In this short film, recorded by the astronauts of the Apollo 12, we see a white sphere move quickly above the moon's surface. While the Apollo 17 was landing on the lunar surface, one of these white spheres was filmed as it moved to the side of the earthly space module. During mission STS-51A of the American shuttle Discovery in November 1984, an apparently metal object entered into the video camera's field of vision, making a quick maneuver to the right and then disappearing again. When watching the scene again, we can see how the light and shadows change as the object moves, in correspondence with the overall light and shadows in the scene. This was not the first occasion in which the video cameras installed on the shuttle detected these objects. During mission STS-37 of April 1991, a nearly identical object was filmed. This time, the object didn't disappear straight away, but rather it swayed in front of the video camera long enough for us to observe its features more closely. In a close-up, we can observe a slight swinging motion as the object hovers in front of the lens. We can also evaluate how its shadow changes as it moves, indicating that the object is three-dimensional. The next video is even more extraordinary. It was recorded in August 1991 by a Japanese colleague who accompanied Russian astronauts Volkov and Krikalev on their mission. Initially, the images show the shuttle bringing supplies to the Mir space station. Then, the video camera catches a glowing object that stands out clearly against the dark space outside. The object seems to move, but this is actually due to the unsteady hand of the person recording the video. Later, the footage moves for a few seconds to the Earth's surface. When the camera returns to the glowing object filmed previously, we see that its distance from the planet has decreased, and it is quickly approaching our atmosphere. It then disappears, definitely into the faint light. The maneuver demonstrates that unidentified flying objects enter into our atmosphere. It it was the first time such a clear video showing this kind of event had been recorded. Specialists at the Russian Mission Control Center call these phenomena anomalies, a word that actually makes many significant implications. In this extraordinary footage, we find ourselves inside Moscow's Mission Control Center. We can see the Russian space station projected on the giant screen. The video camera filming it is on the American space shuttle Discovery, and it's filming the moment of separation from the Mir, which holds the astronauts Vladimir Solovyov and Nikolai Budarin. The large map shows the orbital route followed by the space station, which was near the coasts of South America at the time. At one point, the person filming in the control center turns the video camera toward the large screen to film a scene that seems truly unbelievable. We see a glowing, pulsing sphere coming from the lower right, fly sideways along the side of the orbit station, and immediately afterward, another sphere moves downward on the right-hand side of the screen. Then, on the right-hand side again, two further spheres appear, one above and one below, slowly moving across the field of vision. In the top left light panel, we can read the date and time, 18th of November 1995, at about 12:22. Finally, yet another spherical object appears from above, flying not far above the space station. The Russian Space Agency can give no real explanation regarding the nature of these spheres, which, as we've noted, they very concisely call anomalies. The video we're about to see was recorded by an American researcher who prefers to remain anonymous for security reasons. A UFO research enthusiast who has managed to install 4 powerful satellite dishes in the courtyard of his home. He intercepted transmissions made during the shuttle's joint mission with the Mir space station. The images are astonishing. As the shuttle docks and separates from Mir, several pulsating objects can be seen twirling near the earthly shuttles. The maneuvers that many of these objects make suggest that they are vehicles equipped with an autonomous propulsion system, and that they cannot be man-made satellites, meteors, space debris, ice fragments, or anything of the kind. Their sudden acceleration or sharp halting movements seem to demonstrate that these vehicles may be built with technologies unknown to us. This incredible document is from mission STS-84 of the American space shuttle Atlantis. Here we see the entire filmed sequence. We can make out part of the shuttle's hull and Mir in the distance. As the video camera reduces the field of vision, we note a group of objects moving away from the Russian station. As the camera continues to zoom in, 2 further objects appear, making a diagonal trajectory from the lower right to upper left. The larger object comes rather close to Mir. Then, another sphere emerges on the right, following the same trajectory of the previous ones. Immediately afterward, we note a white sphere in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, followed by other, smaller and faster objects. When this first group is about to move off-screen, the shuttle's video camera moves downward, filming another group of objects that have moved toward Mir in the meantime. As we can see, the largest of the 3 objects halts its course and, accelerating slightly, it changes direction, moving more vertically than before. Finally, a new, glowing, pulsing sphere arrives from below. As soon as it enters the field of vision, it changes direction and speeds up. Immediately afterward, this craft is followed by a smaller object. and then by a second, which flies out from beneath the space station. We'll now see the most important phases of this extraordinary sequence, enlarged and at different speeds, to show the maneuvers more clearly. Naturally, one would think that if these were flying detritus or meteors, their number, frequency and proximity to Mir would be a constant danger to the life of the astronauts on board and to the integrity of the space station itself, such that it would be advisable to return to Earth. If this didn't happen, it may mean that many of the objects we've just seen are of an entirely different nature. According to the most recent scientific research, there is a direct link between light spheres and crop circles. In addition to statements made by various witnesses, there are videos in which we see these little white spheres floating above the fields where these fascinating designs have appeared. Of all the documents showing these objects, the one that has caused the most sensation is the video in which we can see spheres flying over a wheat field. In just a few seconds, a design looking like a snowflake appears in the field. The video was recorded at 5 o'clock in the morning on August the 11th, 1996 by John Wabley, an English crop circle enthusiast near Oliver Castle in England.
This is amazing.
There has been much controversy regarding the authenticity of this video, but careful analysis conducted by the American investigator Jim Diletoso, an expert in computerized video analysis, found no trace of falsification.
The key thing is that if the Oliver's Castle image was made digitally, that word digital says it went into a computer. In the vertical interval signal of the copy that we have, there is no evidence that it was ever digital format. So point of the story is I find no evidence of a hoax in the Oliver's Castle crop circle formation, and I find enough unique and interesting things to think that it very well could be real and should be studied further.
Other researchers have denied the authenticity of the video, but so far, no one has been able to provide valid evidence to support this argument. Furthermore, the design appearing in the video was real, and it had the features of true crop circles. However, according to the famous English crop circle scholar, engineer Colin Andrews, some doubts have been raised due to the strange behavior of the person responsible for the video.
So I am, unfortunately, as a researcher, not qualified in that field, simply to accept that Jim believes it, and others, it to be technically real, authentic, and yet the groundwork into the individual concerned is highly questionable, rather than I am so sorry not to be able to totally embrace it.
In any case, while waiting for a definitive verdict, the video gives us a visual idea of what happens in these cases, corresponding to the statements made by numerous reliable witnesses who have seen such a phenomenon take place.
Strange story. People tell about balls of light, whatever they are, flying around in crop circles, flying over the fields, and sometimes even creating crop circles.
Regardless of whether the video is authentic or a fake, one thing is certain: it illustrates what many people have observed throughout the world.
The videos we've seen so far show an astonishing reality unknown to most. These documents have emerged thanks to the investigations conducted by researcher Giorgio Bongiovanni.
I've been able to collect these videos and testimonies thanks to the cooperative relationship I've established with some of the leading ufological researchers and investigators throughout the world.
Io ritengo che il pubblico debba conoscere queste testimonianze e questi filmati
I believe that the public ought to know about these testimonies and videos because today, after so much skepticism and disbelief, science is beginning to take these phenomena seriously, at least for study purposes.
Amongst the scientifically valid studies on light spheres and their relationship to the crop circle phenomenon, the recent work of Professor Elьtьо Hazельхоффом is quite noteworthy. The professor is currently one of the leading scholars of the crop circle phenomenon. His research has analyzed the possible link between the deformations of the nodes in the wheat plants sampled from the crop circles and an electromagnetic source placed at a certain height above the wheat. The result of these analyses is displayed in this graph. Each vertical bar represents the average length of 20 steles in a specific area within the circle. The perfect symmetry in the graph is astonishing. The same exact correspondence was found in 3 further cross-sections within the circle. This is a highly significant discovery. The length of the nodes is perfectly symmetrical within the crop circle. It's circular in shape. This indicates that whatever mechanism created the crop circle also caused the nodes to lengthen. If this formation had been caused by simply flattening the wheat with an axle, as many think, there would be no reason for the nodes to grow progressively toward the center of the crop circle.
Every single plant has the same amount of sunlight, of water, of temperature, everything. So how does a plant somewhere in the center of the circle know that it is in the center of the circle? If you look at this distribution of thermal expansion of these plants, of the cells, you find that it perfectly matches the heat distribution that would be created by a little heat source, a spherical source of electromagnetic radiation, which would heat up the crop. Don't ask me how. The match is just perfect. And actually you can extract the height of this source from the distribution of this thermal expansion. And in one case, the height corresponded to 4 meters and 10 centimeters, while the eyewitness said it was about 3 or 4 meters.
The measurements taken for the average length of the nodes have been discovered to correspond perfectly to theoretical values if the source of the radiation had been at a height of 4.1 meters above the plants. This finding perfectly fits the statements made by witnesses and the images shown in the Oliver Castle video.
And you find quantitative evidence which corresponds perfectly to what these people say. So at that point in time, you can't just ignore what these people say. You should at least pay attention to them.
Professor Hazельхофф has written an article giving details of identical results achieved in other crop circles. In the article, he arrives at the conclusion that the electromagnetic light spheres must be involved with the development of the crop circles. The article was published in Physiologia Plantarum, a scientific journal on plant physiology and biophysics. Thanks to this publication, the idea that the flying light spheres are in some way responsible for the crop circles is no longer just a hypothesis. Thus, what we've seen so far has confirmed that unusual objects are flying in our skies and producing extraordinary phenomena such as crop circles. The complex nature of the data gathered suggests that the phenomenon originates from a form of intelligence. It's up to us to continue seeking and to understand whether this intelligence has terrestrial origins. Crop circles, a mystery that fascinates, amazes, and gives rise to heated debate. Is this phenomenon of human origin? Are the authors really 2 old men, David Chorley and Doug Bauer? Yet, one of the pair is now dead, and the pictograms are still there. They continue to appear in ever more beautiful and complex forms, in spite of the fact that one of the pair is no longer with us. Who creates them? Are they man's work, or were they created by forms of intelligence of other origin? What is the function of the mysterious balls of light often seen above the fields where crop circles appear? Is someone trying to communicate with us? A series of questions to which we will try to give an answer. a mystery to be resolved that could be important. The messages conveyed by the symbolism of the crop circles are repeated in an extremely similar manner by the communications delivered by contactees in the course of the years. So, we could consider this phenomenon a new and more evident form of contactism, in which the word is replaced by the charming and harmonic lines of these patterns. The message that is being conveyed to us by the circle makers is important. Indeed, it goes beyond its physical and scientific aspect. Having said this, we will call upon what the Swiss contactee Billy Meyer reported about a flying object from the Pleiades, which left the 3 marks we are now seeing on the grass in Switzerland. On the basis of the elements examined so far, we must point out that the alleged experts and the mass media have acted in bad faith in the way they have presented this subject.
And this is unfortunately where you and I are sat here, but the masses, the public, have been contaminated by the irresponsible media that I've been discussing. And therefore they cannot come to this judgment. If they have been told it is a hoax, then they are not attempting to understand what is there.
An attitude which is extremely hypocritical and which implies a strong interest in concealing what is taking place on our planet. One consideration that can be made with regard to the mass media is that it is important that they all get the right information. This is fundamental for the advancement and development of mankind, and whoever possesses the right information or the knowledge also possesses an extraordinary means of power capable of conditioning people so that they favor certain choices and lifestyles even against their own interests. The scandal of the 2 English pensioners, Doug Bower and David Chorley, erupted due to articles that appeared in a British scandal-seeking paper called Today. The article that appeared on September the 9th, 1991, is a clear example. These 2 pensioners stated that they were the authors of all the crop circles which had appeared up to then, and which comprised a period of about 13 years.
Clearly untrue. There was no way they could have produced, at that time, the peak of 15 each day. These are 265 they were, them, 65 years old. You cannot place across the whole country 15 circles in one day and be responsible for them. No way. I mean, it's totally impossible.
In order to test their reliability, they were invited to make the circles in the fields in the presence of eyewitnesses and movie cameras, but the outcome was quite disappointing.
We did the day after they did set this in the newspaper. We arrived with national television cameras, and we asked them to make one in front of the television cameras. And the one they've made, which I think you've probably seen, we took photographs of, I sometimes show it at lectures, everybody laughs. It is a mess. There is no symmetry, no beautiful symmetry. The plants are ripped out of the ground, they are shredded. It was made by these people. That proves nothing. It proves one thing, that what we have been looking at was not what they did.
Although one might accept the fact that these 2 might have made some pictograms, they cannot possibly have been the authors and accomplishers of the entire phenomenon. As a result of the researchers' persistence, they confessed to lying in a private conversation, but refused to confess publicly.
Ich habe selber mit einem von den beiden, Dave Power, gesprochen.
I have spoken with one of them, David Chorley, and he himself has confessed that they too have seen many crop circles, that they have no idea about whoever can have created them, and that they have first observed the phenomenon and then reproduced it. As a matter of fact, their crop circles are ridiculous copies of the original phenomenon. Every researcher has identified them as hoaxes.
Nevertheless, even today, many people consider the 2 pensioners the authors of the crop circles. What's more, Dave Chorley passed away due to a serious illness, and the pictograms are still appearing worldwide in greater numbers and with more beautiful patterns. The dynamics of these events are an indication of the methodology of discredit and debunking adopted against the phenomenon of the crop circles. Similarly, the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects and the extraterrestrial presence on our planet is being boycotted. An attitude that does not reflect the actions governments should take in the interests of all peoples.
Kontaktaufnahmen vorbereiten, vertraut machen.
They should reveal step by step data, facts, evidence, and they should stop this stupid debunking and ridiculing policy, which is, in effect, the policy of power.
Wissen bedeutet Macht. Und man will mit diesem Wissen natürlich schon, man will es in den Händen einer...
Knowledge means power. We are in the hands of an unscrupulous elite who govern the world policy, who secretly control everything.
Im Verborgenen steuert die...
If knowledge is synonymous of power, then it is very likely that the government secretly analyze this phenomenon and study it with great care, but withhold the results from the public and make every effort to discredit the phenomenon in the eyes of the general public. Evidence of this is the considerable military presence near sites where the circles have appeared. Anonymous black choppers have been spotted and photographed as they flew over the sites of the pictograms. They have also been seen in relation with some UFO events.
Many times the researchers have seen these black helicopters chasing the small unmanned spheres that we believe are connected with the phenomenon, that are responsible for the phenomenon. Obviously, the British government has already discovered a long time ago where the crop circle phenomenon comes from.
In 1999, an unexpected initiative taken by the English government further confirmed their hostility for this type of phenomena and for those who study them.
The civilian pilots who have flown with the crop circles researchers have only asked for petrol expenses, have then received some letters from the British government in which they were warned to stop this or they would have their flying licenses revoked. Today, the crop circle researchers can fly over the fields only with commercial helicopters at the cost of 1,200,000 lira per hour. That makes the crop circle investigation more difficult.
All these activities indicate that those who hold the strings of the world do not want to afford mankind the opportunity to realize that advanced civilizations are encouraging a change of heart on our part. If man became aware that it is possible to live in peace and harmony, not waging wars, without battles of any kind, with true justice and equality for all, many privileges would immediately fall. It is therefore important not to be caught unprepared and to pay attention to all the maneuvers which try to conceal and discredit these extraordinary phenomena. It is necessary to investigate quite seriously and with great care and with great open-mindedness. In Italy, the phenomenon of the crop circles is practically absent. The photographs we are showing are relative to events occurred in the fall of 1995 in the province of Pordenone. However, almost all of the components manifested by the phenomenon in England are missing here. The similarities of these interactions with the crop circles are only in the circular shape and in some effects found on the plants involved in the phenomenon. The meticulous investigations carried out by the Italian researcher Professor Antonio Chiumento have brought to light the characteristic effects caused by the action of some form of energy comparable to microwaves. We must note that in the same period in which these marks appeared, this area had seen an intense activity of unidentified flying objects.
There is grounds to believe that some extraterrestrial intelligent form has interacted in Arba, Malnisio and Maniago It should be noted that in their vicinity is found the NATO base at Aviano, where in the past numerous sightings have been reported, which have not been explained.
As we've mentioned before, the link between UFOs and crop circles is considered valid by the researchers. In over 20% of the cases, there were sightings in the proximity of and in the specific sites of crop circles. There is footage showing small white spheres hovering over the fields where the crop circles have appeared. In the documents showing these objects, there is one that has caused a considerable stir. In it, one can see spheres flying over a wheat field, and in a few seconds, a pictogram similar to a snow crystal appears. The footage was recorded at 5 a.m. on August the 11th, 1996 by John Wabley, an English UFO enthusiast of the crop circles phenomenon in proximity of Oliver Castle in England.
This is amazing.
Numerous controversies have been raised concerning the authenticity of the footage. However, the accurate analyses carried out by the American researcher Jim Diletoso, an expert of computerized systems of video analysis, have not ascertained any trace of falsification.
My opinion on the Oliver's Castle video footage is that there is no evidence of a hoax. The key thing is that if the Oliver's Castle image was made digitally, that word digital says it went into a computer. In the vertical interval signal of the copy that we have, there is no evidence that it was ever digital format. So the point of the story is I find no evidence of a hoax in the Oliver's Castle crop circle formation, and I find enough unique and interesting things to think that it very well could be real and should be studied further.
Other researchers have challenged the authenticity of this footage, but so far, no one has been able to furnish any valid proof. What's more, the pictogram that appears in the video was real and contained the characteristics seen in the real crop circles. The only doubts persisting concern the unusual behavior of the person who filmed it.
So I am, unfortunately, as a researcher, not qualified in that field, simply to accept that Jim believes it, and others, it to be technically real, authentic, and yet the groundwork into the individual concerned is highly questionable. And I am so sorry not to be able to totally embrace it, because I'm a little unhappy with certain facets.
In any event, while we await a definite response concerning this footage, we can nevertheless watch what occurs in these cases, a behavior which is consistent with the reports made by many reliable eyewitnesses who've seen this phenomenon as it was occurring.
Aside from the possibility that the video might be real or false, it certainly has shown what many people around the world have observed.
There is other footage, quite well known by the UFO enthusiasts and UFO experts, in which similar objects are seen as they perform maneuvers that no vehicle of earthly origin would be able to perform. During the maneuvers of Apollo 17 on the moon's surface, one of these white spheres was seen hovering next to the space module. This footage was filmed in January 1976 over the English county of Wiltshire during an experimental flight of Concorde by the cameraman aboard a British Airways plane. In the 90s, these spheres were seen and recorded on film even more frequently in various parts of the world, an activity which is increasing along with the phenomenon of the crop circles and of other extraordinary manifestations worldwide. The particular nature of these spheres and the potent spiritual symbolism manifested by the crop circles has led some experts to suppose that in reality, the entities responsible for the crop circles go beyond the concept of scientifically and technologically advanced alien civilizations, postulating that they could be such highly developed entities that they have totally sublimed the physical nature of their body onto a plane of pure energy. A concept that has become familiar to the public thanks to the experience of the contactee Carlos Diaz, but also largely spoken about by the contactee Eugenio Siragusa.
Through to the signs on the fields, in the fields, that if we are looking at another intelligent hand here on the planet Earth, we would, I think, be forced to accept that the connection between us and, we'll say, them, which could be a God force, could be the God force, that this is being done with total respect.
The impact of these magnificent compositions is many times described with a great emotional feeling, even by the most important researchers of the phenomenon, as if it were an enlightening, mystical or spiritual experience.
One of the really nicest experiences is when you walk into a formation. The feeling that I get when I walk in them, right from the beginning, has been that they were really special. At times they feel too special to actually walk in. You feel like I should stand here and just respect.
This particular sensation, which has changed the life of many people, including Colin Andrews, is not derived from understanding the message given by the pictogram, usually deciphered or understood only sometime later. It would seem that these patterns are capable of instantly communicating subliminal messages, data that go beyond the ego and reach directly the innermost part of man. Various experts believe that besides trying to amplify the awareness of mankind and warn them of the changes in course, the phenomenon represents some kind of energy therapy necessary to counteract the destructive effects of man's activities on the ecosystem. Truly, it implies a restoring equilibrium to the planet. This is also confirmed by the consideration that the sites in which the crop circles mostly appear, such as Stonehenge and Silbury Hill, are found on some energy lines of the planet similar to the meridians of acupuncture on the human body. These sites correspond to particularly active focal points leading to the chakra in human beings. Chakra means vortex or spiral, and the same spiral is one of the most characteristic elements of the crop circles. It is remarkable that the grid structure of these energy lines of the planet are very similar to the famous orthotechnic lines, which represent the preferential routes on which the UFOs travel and appear, as statistically revealed by the known ufologist Amy Michel.
There
is a very interesting connection between the crop circles and an ancient science called geomancy. This ancient culture practiced acupuncture. It manipulated the magnetic energy of the earth thanks to certain areas where sacred buildings have been built. In these areas flows the energy that establishes a contact with the cosmos. They use this energy to make the soil rich. Aimé Michel, an important French UFO researcher, has observed that the majority of UFO sightings happen along these ancient lines, and that the UFOs work with the magnetic field of the Earth, and they use them like roads, like the railroad, and these are present also in the crop circles.
Various theories that we've heard so far need further scientific checking, but we can certainly say that the crop circles announce a change which is the dawn of this time. A change announced by innumerable signs, and awaited by many people.
Everywhere I go, people say, I feel something big's going to happen. And you see, when I say it, my hairs are standing up on my arms, because I know that too. We are seeing in the environment, in the meteorology, in the weather, and the climate, other signs of change. These, I believe, were just one series of signs which are referred to in prophecies from the Bible to other major prophecies, foreseeing future events. The crop circle phenomenon, these patterns, I would call them maybe the cosmic artistry. They are just, but they are another layer of persuasive signs. Only, I think, until we are able to really establish who we are at the very, very depths of our being, to know what we represent, to know how truthful we are being, whether do we really want to resonate with this planet, or do we want to get as much out of it as we can and destroy it? I think it is giving us important information. I think it's demonstrating the new millennium, the new science. And the new science comes out of a new time, a new age, where we are resonating with nature, and we will be able to not only enjoy, but to have a quality of life much better than we have now through materialism.
Es wurde angekündigt von Jesus von Nazareth, dass am
It has been announced by Jesus from Nazareth that at the end of the times some signs in the sky and on the earth would appear that would make the whole mankind understand that an era was about to end and a new one to begin. All the prophecies refer to this: the third message of Fatima, Michael Nostradamus' prophecies, the messages of Garabandal, and so on. We have bleeding statues, stigmatas, we have people who have visions, Marian apparitions, we have an increasing number of UFO sightings. We have crop circles that appear in 24 countries all over the world. We have signs in the sky and on the earth, and we must be blind if we do not recognize that this has been announced at the beginning of the third millennium. If we as people are not influenced by consumerism, by greed, but by spiritual values, the values of Christianity, by the values of an authentic religion that we have to feel within us, then we as people could create a new age of brotherhood and justice here on earth. If we recognize that everything in the universe is connected by way of cause and effect, and if we modify our path, we can avoid all the prophetized catastrophes. We have to heed what is revealed, what is in the Gospels, what is told in the prophecies, and so on. We have to understand that we hold the destiny of mankind, the destruction or the construction of a golden age.
With words of hope and exhortation on the part of these researchers, we close this path that we hope has brought some light on a very important phenomenon of these times. In this frantic, chaotic, and often cynical 20th century, a world scenario of social and environmental crises is the setting for a series of unusual events that have been appearing ever more frequently to speak to man's awareness. Those whose attention has been drawn to these events have been wondering whether the vision of reality as presented by science is real or the result of a dogma destined to crumble as events develop. In this context, a major role is attributed to unusual patterns that appeared in various crop fields in the early 80s, mostly wheat fields, in many parts of the world and above all in England. As the configurations started to appear in more and more fields and forming complex patterns, an increasing number of researchers became interested in the study of this phenomenon. Among them, the famous English engineer Colin Andrews, one of the main international experts of crop circles, and the German anthropologist Professor Michael Hessemann, a famous worldwide researcher of UFO and crop circles, will lead us to discover the peculiar features of this phenomenon. These investigators have contributed considerably to the study that is slowly shedding light on the secrets behind one of the most fascinating mysteries of our times, the mystery of the crop circles. It seems incredible that the extraordinary phenomenon of the crop circles should appear each year at regular intervals in the same period and often in the same fields, as a result of which a trend of tourism of the circles has developed. Each year, a swarm of enthusiasts and onlookers gathers in the British fields as if these configurations were a normal event. The regularity of the phenomenon is not found in other types of unusual phenomena which have engaged our attention, including the UFO sightings. Moreover, unlike the elusive nature of the UFO phenomenon, the characteristics of the crop circles are easy to identify and to analyze.
The great thing about the crop circle phenomenon in some ways is that so very often in investigating aerial phenomena, you rely upon the credibility of an eyewitness seeing a UFO. You are in the hands of their experience, their truthfulness or otherwise. It's a flinching glance. Here you have a phenomenon which is recorded on the ground. You can go and you can touch it. You can measure it. You can analyze it.
Thanks to this, it has been possible to establish its authenticity incontrovertibly. So, the indifference or the discredit of the international scientific community, of the mass media, and of the institutions is apparently inexplicable. They act as if the phenomenon were the product of the fantasy of some fanatic, or a prank, and thus deprived of any social or scientific interest. An attitude that surely has valid but unknown motivation. We will try to find out what they are with the help of the experts. The first sporadic news about crop circles was heard in the 60s in Australia, only to become regular by the 70s. At first, they appeared as plain and small circles, and by the mid-80s, they appeared in composite groups. They constantly increased in number up to 1989 and spread worldwide, but mostly in southern England, in the counties of Wiltshire and Hampshire. In 1990, there was a quantum leap. Over 1,200 circles appeared. They came in complex patterns and different shapes, and were therefore called pictograms. Their more marked symbolism has led the scientists to believe that this phenomenon carries a message.
Offenbar ist das Phänomen von einer Phase, in der es einfach unserer
Certainly, the phenomenon has developed from a phase that wanted to catch our attention.
Phänomen klar war, weil viele Menschen gedacht haben, es wären UFO-Landestellen. Von dem Moment an, wo die
And in which it was clear the connection with the UFO phenomenon into a new phase, the communication with symbols.
der Kommunikation mit Symbolen.
The diameter of the crop circles varies from a few centimeters to a few meters, and some, as much as 300 meters across, have been found on surfaces measuring over 10,000 square meters. They mostly appear from spring to the end of summer. In other words, the time it takes the crops in the fields in which they appear to reach a certain height and maturity. The circles appear in various fields: plain tall grass, oilseed rape, barley, oats, and, above all, wheat fields. Official science, in the person of scholars, or so they are defined, has explained the crop circles as the work of man, or the result of natural causes. At first, this phenomenon was attributed to the gags of pranksters, to whirlwinds, to something that is best known as mushrooms, or to other more or less credible theories. One such theory stands out. Dr. Terence Maiden has stated that the circles are caused by some hypothetical plasma vortices, which, descending from above, press the notorious circles into the fields. This theory was given some credit, but, as if in reply to Dr. Maiden's theory, soon after, some very complex shapes appeared, and this theory rapidly fell into disrepute. The most striking aspect of this phenomenon is that the crops are flattened with great precision. The edges of the circles are clean, as if drawn with an enormous compass. The lines are neatly drawn, as if a giant ruler had been used. The crops inside the circles are not damaged, snapped, or broken. The stalks are bent down to a few centimeters from the ground and shaped into spiral patterns and continue to grow until they are ripe in the new horizontal position. Mostly, these patterns are in layers or follow a weaving effect. Various pictograms are aligned in a way compared to elements, appraisable only at great heights, similar to certain conformations of the soil, archaeological sites, and underground waterways. To all these elements, which are noticed at first glance, we must add the result of the analyses carried out on the crops and on the soil taken from within the crop circles, on the energy fields present within the area of the pictograms and in close proximity of the same. These results confirm even further the anomalous nature of the phenomenon and its non-human origin. Magnetic fields with values 300% higher than those picked up outside the pictogram, which gave results on the order of 5 millitesla, were picked up inside the crop circles. These energy fields often influence the electronic equipment of TV crews who've been inside the patterns. Even the crops and the soil involved directly with the phenomenon manifest a number of anomalies which suggest that the action of some kind of a natural energy is involved. The soil tested has shown abnormal levels of radioactivity, and the microscopic analyses carried out on the plants have shown heightened modifications on the molecular and crystal-like structure. In addition, spots caused by dehydration were found inside the plants. The plants also manifested different effects depending on the period in which the crops were exposed to the mysterious energy that creates the crop circles. With young plants, the seeds do not reach maturity and die. In the plants which have reached maturity, the seeds become sterile. However, in both cases, the seeds are deformed. On the other hand, if the plants have reached maturity, they grow much more rapidly and become stronger and healthier than the others. The American biochemist Dr. Levengood, an internationally renowned researcher from the University of Michigan, has found that with young plants, the cells of the stalks have more visible nodes. The nodes are bigger in size, and the stalks bend at a sharper angle compared to the plants taken from outside the pictograms. Dr. Levengood has examined various samples and has been able to reproduce the same effects by placing healthy plants in an ordinary microwave oven for a few minutes. Thanks to this simple experiment, he was able to prove the theory that the deformations found on the crops from inside the pictograms were caused by some unnatural force. The kind of microwave oven we use in the kitchen can reproduce only some of the effects seen on the plants. But the figurative component, as well as the mathematical, geometrical, and symbolical elements, can only be caused by an intelligence capable of producing an energy wave containing a series of information reproduced on the soil of the pictograms. The engineer Colin Andrews was the first to present such a theory in 1998 as a result of outstanding findings made during an experiment carried out in Germany, when a bowl containing distilled water was placed inside some crop circles. Later, when the water was examined through a spectrograph, it showed that the water molecules arranged themselves according to a pattern that reproduced the basic pattern of the pictogram inside which it had been placed. It was as if the water had memorized the data contained in the energy field that had generated the pattern pressed in the soil. In the photograph, we can see the disposition of the water molecules. All this gives us an idea of how difficult it may be to realize credible hoaxes.
It is very unlikely that a faker could manage to create these patterns on a big field during the night, in the dark. If you then enter a fate circle, you realize that the plants are not laid down but broken. They are not bent, they are not deformed. In the fate circles, we don't have many chemical and physical anomalies. In addition to this, when some of the most complicated crop circles were analyzed, they turned out to be created with a very complex geometry.
In fact, the English space engineer Roy Dutton has discovered that the spiral on which are laid down the stalks correspond to a precise mathematical model, which is repeated in all the genuine circles. What's more, the spiral inside the circle is part of a vortex in contraction, while the line marking the edge of the outer circle, outlining the pattern, is laid in the opposite direction. In various complex pictograms of the individual circles, the mathematical progression by Fibonacci, in which a number is the sum of the preceding two, was found. This means that the diameter of a circle is equal to the sum of the diameters of the two preceding circles. What's more, these particular formations are spirals developed according to the golden section. Certain geometric proportions were considered sacred in the past and used in the construction of ancient temples, which gives a special harmony to everything realized following this parameter. In the 90s, some of the pictograms which appeared were real fractals. These diagrams are obtained by complex mathematical calculations, represented by a computer graphic, and show surprising analogies with the forms we know in nature. They are complex diagrams which are impossible to calculate even in small dimensions without the help of a computer. And the pictograms we are seeing are real fractals, not their representations. The first one appeared on August 13th, 1991, near Cambridge, the renowned university where the founder of these complicated diagrams taught, the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot. His very colleagues at Cambridge University stated that, given its perfection, the pictogram could not be a hoax.
The Mandelbrot set itself is, as you know, a fractal, and it represents that state which exists in as a geometry recorded by powerful computers, placed together into a pattern. It represents a state, and that state is the very boundary between order as we know it and chaos. But of course, you know, the more we're learning about chaos, chaotic order is in fact a form of order. It is a phase that order goes through, which we call chaos. But the fractal represents the boundary which exists between those two states as they move from order into chaos and from chaos back into order. And I think it is very important that we do understand what happens when order breaks down into chaos.
The American Professor Hawkins has established that the geometric relationship between various patterns contained in some pictograms is identical to the mathematical relationship existing between two notes on a piano. In other words, some pictograms are the figurative correspondent of a sound, impressed on a wheat field. Other important elements have been found by Dr. Richard Hoagland, the known American researcher and NASA consultant. Best known for his studies on the monuments found on Mars in Cydonia Valley. He found that there is an astounding correspondence in the mathematical and geometrical components of the Martian monuments and archaeological remains found in the ancient sacred site of Avebury in England. According to Hoagland, the topographical disposition of these two sites, on Earth and on Mars, overlap as if both areas came from the same plan. After analyzing the mathematical and geometrical structure of some patterns formed on crop circles, Hoagland has found the same mathematical and geometrical components on the basic constructive project of these patterns, also found on the monuments in Cydonia Valley on Mars and in Avebury in England. It was as if the ancient builders had returned and given us news of it through the crop circles.
Well, Richard Hoagland and myself have been in contact for maybe 4 or 5 years, looking at not just the geometry of the actual crop circles, but their placement. He is particularly impressed by the precise placement of some of the major crop designs in the vicinity of Avebury. Their alignments and the placement of the crop designs with relation to that area in Wiltshire, England, as an overlay onto the Cydonia area of Mars.
A correspondence based on tetrahedral geometry, which was considered sacred in the past, and based on its parameters, other famous constructions of ancient times have also been suggested, such as Teotihuacan in Mexico, the Giza pyramids in Egypt, and Stonehenge in England. In addition, the studies carried on the renowned pattern Mother of All Pictograms, which appeared in England on July 16, 1991, indicate that this extraordinary formation contained all the mathematical and geometrical constants of the Cydonia Plain, as well as being the Earth's bidimensional counterpart of the Great Pentagonal Pyramid found in the Martian Valley. In addition, this pictogram symbolizes the principle of the three-in-one, that is to say, the divinity, as we can see in the corresponding esoteric symbol.
And we have recorded accurately many designs, including Barbary Castle. There is no question that it is a tetrahedron, that its geometry does fit Richard's work.
Having established that this is a real phenomenon, we now need to know what its purpose is.
Once you have eliminated the hoax theory covering all of the phenomena, the one thing that you are left with facing you, and it smacks of it throughout, is that it's a message. We begin to see that there is information which is decodable by two routes.
Numerous patterns formed by the circles in the cornfields are still a mystery to researchers, whereas many others have been deciphered and the message they contain revealed. This has been represented by astronomical symbology, common to ancient cultures such as the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Celts, or to ethnic groups such as the Aborigines, the Dogon, or the Native American Hopi. Symbologies which have expressed real philosophical, esoteric, and spiritual concepts. The fact that the circle has been the basic pattern of the crop circles from the start of the phenomenon is not a coincidence. In all ancient cultures, the circle represents the oneness of creation. That is to say that behind an apparent diversity, there is an intimate link between all things. One of the first composite circles appeared in the county of Wiltshire on September the 10th, 1988. It belongs to the ancient religious traditions of the Celts. It represents a cross within a circle, and it signifies the predominance of the spirit over matter. Subsequently, many more patterns appeared which related to the reinstatement of the contact between sky and the earth and the return of very advanced beings coming from the cosmos who were the masters, the instructors of great past civilizations. A most beautiful one appeared in England on July the 24th, 1992. A logos of the sun, a sun symbol which also contains a sign resembling the Sumerian cuneiform script. It is called Din Jir, and it means the righteous ones with the heavenly chariots of fire. A symbol which was seen by the American Deputy Marshal Lonnie Zamora on the back of an alien spaceship as it landed in New Mexico on April the 24th, 1964. It reappeared in 1999 in a gigantic 300-meter-long pictogram. The sun symbologies are most predominant in the pictograms, surely due to their deep spiritual meaning. On the night of July the 23rd, 1991 in Germany, in the vicinity of Grasdorf, one of the largest and most complicated German pictograms appeared. A few days later, a young man carrying a metal detector found inside the pictogram some metal plates, impressed with the same pattern of the pictogram itself.
Nun gibt es in Deutschland sehr viele Menschen, deren Hobby das Schatzsuchen.
In Germany, there are many people who are used to search for treasures with a metal detector. One of these seekers had the idea to walk into the Grasdorf pictogram and see what would happen.
Drei der Kreise von dem Kontrast-Piktogramm Platten, metallische Platten von etwa 30.
Inside the pictogram, he discovered 3 metal plates of 30-35 centimeters in diameter.
Bronze und hatte ein Gewicht von etwa.
One of these was made of bronze and weighed 8 kilograms.
Zweite war aus Silber und hatte ein Gewicht.
The second was made of silver, and its weight, if I remember correctly, was 12 kilograms. And the third one was of pure gold, and it would mean a weight of over 20 kilograms.
The pictograms and the symbols impressed on the plates are related to ancient German traditions.
It recalls the Edda, the Germanic mythology. It talks about the golden tables of the gods that would be found at the end of the times. So also in this case we notice that there is a connection between the ancient mythology and the crop circles phenomenon.
The passing of comets and other important astronomic events were considered by ancient cultures signs carrying great changes, purification. Even the crop circles have emphasized the importance of these phenomena.
These patterns have appeared many times. We have had representations of heavenly bodies, comets approaching the Earth. Many pictograms referred to the sun eclipse. Indeed, they have enhanced the event.
When the comets arrived in the fields, before 4 new comets were discovered, we really did think that was pretty extraordinary. We had comets ahead of Hyakutake, Hale-Bopp, the Jupiter collision. All of those similar designs were appearing in the fields before they were discovered.
This is a very important finding, since it shows that the crop circles are not made only by fakers. They are not man-made, because they could know nothing about this. The makers of the crop circles must have a knowledge that is greater than that of man.
The historical analytical aspect of the crop circles has amazed all those who've studied this fascinating phenomenon seriously and without prejudice. It is increasingly difficult to doubt that they are not the work of man. The symbology manifests a message that is ever more immediate and urgent in this particular historical moment for mankind. We can only hope for change in the attitude of the mass media and the major institutions. But we obviously cannot be certain that this will happen. In the meantime, the pictograms continue to appear and to spur us on this difficult journey towards the future. The incredible UFO footage by Antonio Urzi has startled researchers all over the world. Nobody had ever seen such clear and plentiful material on UFOs. Analysis and research revealed them to be real objects and of very large dimensions. Are we visited by civilizations coming from the cosmos? Do we finally have the proof? An answer to that might emerge from the study of the Urzi case, a mystery in the Italian skies. The history of Antonio Urzi's sightings started when he was young and initially took place in Tuscany, his native region. During this whole initial period, Antonio did not think of filming his extraordinary encounters. His sightings continued until the year 2000. That year, he moved to Milan, and the experiences of Valle Benedetta came to an end.
This experience stopped around 98 to 99 because I moved to Milan for work.
In 2000, Urzi met Simona Sibilla. After a little while, they started going out, and Antonio found out that she shared the same passion for unidentified flying objects. Meeting Simona marked the beginning of a new phase of his contactee experience. He moved permanently to his current little loft, and through the horizontally pivoted windows, his fantastic visitations started again.
Nell'anno 2000 incontro Simona e questa esperienza riparte.
In 2000, I met Simona, and my experience started again. It kept going on until 2003, when I bought a camcorder in order to start filming what I saw.
After the first videos in 2003 and the incredible series in 2004, in 2005, Antonio filmed one metallic disc. It appeared again at night time. The sighting was dated April the 30th. In the dark sky background, the UFO hull stood out. The movements, the light reflections, and the shape were similar to the disc that appeared on the 3rd of December 2004. Actually, it even seems to be the same object, although the second one was less visible due to a darker sky. The aircraft carried on its maneuvers in front of the camera for about 10 minutes. Anyhow, the two discs filmed in 2005 are less sharp than the nocturnal sighting on the 27th of November 2004.
I had the chance to film two supposedly metallic discs in a dark sky. The background was different from the footage of November. In fact, the sky looked reddish, almost amber-coloured, like the disc itself that was illuminated by the city lights.
Even though the first series of film in the period 2003 to 2005 was extraordinarily sharp, Antonio had no intention to show them around. Nevertheless, at the end, he became aware of their exceptional value and of the importance of a real contact attempt by an extraterrestrial intelligence. So he decided that it was worth spreading his case out. He got in touch with some national and international researchers, but due to a series of misunderstandings, they did not achieve a detailed investigation.
Inizialmente il desiderio di divulgare questo materiale era talmente forte.
At the beginning, the desire to spread out this material was so strong that the approach with regard to some researchers was detrimental due to my wrong attitude. As I had no experience and I have often been aggressive.
The only person supporting him in that period was Giuseppe Garofalo. Giuseppe, Beppe to his friends, was also convinced that the Urzi case should be investigated by other researchers too, and should be made public. In November 2005 then, he met with the researcher Pier Giorgio Carria. Urzi was not present.
My reaction to Garofalo's account was utterly incredulous, at the edge of skepticism. I could not understand why a case with such important material could still be unexplored. At the end, though, Garofalo convinced me. I presented the case to Giorgio Bongiovanni, with whom I have been working for many years, and we decided to involve Jaime Maussan in the investigation. As soon as Correa showed me Urzi's material, I acknowledged its extraordinary importance. I was surprised too for the fact that it was still unknown. I reckon the footage is real. For that reason, we have involved Maussan for the research.
After scanning frames and the film sequences, Maussan understood immediately that it was a case of terrific interest. So he decided to come to Italy. The study of the Urzi case and the divulgence of his extraordinary experience changed for the better. The first meeting took place in March 2006. The reporter was impressed by the frank personality and the open-mindedness of Antonio. Another element that struck the attention of Maussan was the fact that Antonio did not ask for any reward at all for his footage.
Cuando lo investigamos personalmente, nos damos cuenta que el testigo es real.
When we investigated him personally, we realized that the witness was real, genuine. He's not lying. He does not want money and isn't after fame. He puts his name behind each video, exposing himself to risk. These are all the elements I look for when analyzing a case like this. If I get an extraordinary but anonymous video, it's worthless. When the author has his name and surname, as in Urzi's case, I think it gains an extraordinary value.
Antonio showed Maussan other material shot by him. This increased more and more his astonishment for the incredible quality of images.
In his videos, UFOs are the biggest, the closest, the sharpest I've ever seen. Moreover, the object lets him shoot them, so that their features and details can be perfectly observed. For this reason, I think they're really impressive.
After the first positive analytical results, Maussan started to spread out the material of Urzi's experience. Through his program, Los Grandes Misterios del Tercer Milenio and others, on his magazine and in the numerous conferences held in Mexico and in the USA, Antonio's footage amazed millions of people. The news spread out, so other international television stations showed their interest for the Italian case. A Japanese TV station sent a troop to Italy in February 2006. While the investigators continued studying and spreading out the results gathered, Urzi's experiences went on. The videos continued with an increasingly significant impact. On the 1st of July 2006, at about 6 a.m., an Adamski-like UFO appeared. This was the second one he had filmed after the sighting on the 30th of June 2004. This time, the portholes were more evident. You could also see a few small and dark objects around the main craft. Not all of them were spherical, just like in the footage of George Adamski of the 50s and 60s. They were both spherical and lenticular probes. After the first trip in 2006, Maussan went back to Italy several times to carry out further research on Urzi.
I came to Italy, to Milan and Livorno, to meet Antonio's family, and I discovered that he used to see these objects since he was a child. The adults did not pay very much attention to him when he was young. However, as he grew up, little by little, the people close to him understood that something unexplainable was really happening. Since then, they have become testimonies themselves.
Thus, Maussan also met Antonio's family members, his childhood friends, as well as witnesses that have seen UFOs with him.
After my 35 years' experience as an investigator, I reckon that his witness tells the truth. After having interviewed hundreds of people, one can recognize a person telling the truth from somebody lying. Now these people, all those I interviewed, they're spontaneous, transparent and faultless answers. They did not realize that I used to do many simple cross questions. I can conclude that we're in front of a real case and real testimonies.
In 2007, Antonio amazed everybody once again. On the 29th of April at 6:50 p.m, he noticed a dark object outside the window of his loft.
Guardalo. Bello, zitta, piano. Punti di riferimento, punti di riferimento. Ferma, aspetta. Ecco, aspetta, guarda. Guarda da vicino, corri.
No, ma quanto è grande?
Corri, vai giù a sentire, vai giù dalla nonna, corri. Corri! Se ne va! Se ne va!
At the end, the disc seems to suddenly disappear. Actually, Antonio switched his camera off and then on again.
Considering the time, I wanted to have something to eat, so I went to the bathroom to wash my hands. And to my greatest surprise, while looking up through the windows, I saw in the distance that fantastic object. I immediately grabbed the camera that was near my computer and ran back here. The object was still, so what I did was to go straight to the window and open it. I switched on the camera and started shooting. I zoomed in, and the object started to come slowly above me, and I followed its movements. I kept trying to film with the maximum zoom, then I enlarged the range. After that, I stopped recording and switched off the camera in order to grab a stool and carry on filming the object while moving southward. Unfortunately, the object disappeared while I was stepping on the stool.
During the sighting, you could clearly listen to Simona's voice.
Vai giù dalla nonna, corri! Corri!
In quel caso Antonio mi chiese proprio di andare a chiamare la nonna.
On that occasion, Antonio asked me to call my grandmother, because when he films whatever kind of object, he would not like one, but 10,000 witnesses.
Putting together all the elements of this sighting makes it one of the best documents filmed by Antonio Urzi. Studying it closely, you can notice the strong resemblance of this object with the ones filmed at night in 2004 and 2005. A guess could even be that it is the same aircraft, a further recurrence that makes the Urzi case comparable to other important contact experiences of the past.
Me parece que el caso de Antonio Urzi es uno de los más extraordinarios.
I think that Urzi's case is one of the most extraordinary ones in the history of the unidentified flying objects phenomenon. It has special features similar to the cases of George Adamski and Billy Meier.
Tenemos diversos tipos de videos que se ha tomado. Algunos casuales, accidentales.
We have different kinds of videos. Some of them are casual, accidental. Others are made by dedicated people that managed to film possibly as many videos as Antonio Urzi. But nobody shows the peculiarity that these objects really pose for them. They seem to remain there still, remaining well visible as if they understood that somebody is shooting them. This is an evidence that if shown to people, it could produce some change, a reaction. This is the reason why I consider it a case that must be observed with great interest by the world investigators community.
And the reaction of investigators, as well as of the Italian and international audience, is extremely positive when looking at Urzi's footage.
In Italy and abroad, the Urzi's case is currently regarded as one of the four most important cases in the world. To my opinion, it is the most important. At a conference held in 2007 in Washington, USA, after showing his footage, there was a standing ovation. Rarely, audience and investigators have been able to see such spectacular ufological material.
After the initial analysis carried out by Garofalo, Urzi's footage has been analysed also by the Italian National Ufological Center.
Io ho avuto modo di analizzare I filmati di Antonio Urzi, non ho riscontrato segni di manipolazione.
I have had the chance to analyze Antonio Urzi's footage and I have found no evidence of manipulation, neither as digital manipulation such as CGI, nor as model manipulation.
La cosa interessante è che questi oggetti sono contestuali all'ambiente circostante, per cui i riflessi.
The interesting side is that these objects are contextual to the surrounds, so reflections are well placed and fit the background.
The footage on the 29th of April 2007 has also shocked the American expert Jim Delatosso, one of the mythical figures of ufological research, among the top professional analysts of UFO photos and films. He has a long-established career, having even collaborated with NASA, in particular with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
That video is one of the ones that's the most interesting of the latest group that I've been looking at, because there's more than one thing going on than just the picture that's through the lens. There's the conversation that the photographer is having in the room. He's very excited about what's happening, and when you feel that truth coming through in the video, you have a sense that's harder to fake. Images, pictures, those can be faked and we can find that. But faking that passion, that acting, I analyzed the videos, looked at the fingerprints, electronic fingerprints that are necessary to see if it had been superimposed. No evidence of that. The camera movement was interesting in that it had human dynamics to it, not faked in a computer. And the contour, the shape of the craft, the analysis of the edges and the light reveal that it's a large object, not a small object. So I like that case. And maybe find out who they are that are coming here and what they want. I'd like to meet the guy, go there, stand by him when he takes it.
The Antonio Urzi footage successfully passed the laboratory's examinations. Nobody can assert with certainty that these aircrafts are extraterrestrial, but the hypothesis is to be taken into serious consideration, and evaluating the facts, it is the most likely one. In such a multi-case record, spheres could not be missed. They started to manifest from the very beginning and are a very constant presence in front of Antonio's camcorder. They are made of light, black, white, single, or in small groups. And, as we have seen for the metallic discs, the typology is identical to objects filmed all over the world. This rich gallery was still missing the astonishing flotillas, but 2007 turned out to be full of surprises. On the 23rd of September, flotillas made their first appearance.
Simo, c'è il cielo tempestato di sfere. Dappertutto ci sono, guarda quante.
The white spheres were at a higher altitude than those in Mexican footage. However, also in this case, nobody in Italy had shot something like that before.
Mamma quante, Simo!
On the 30th of September, another flotilla appeared, and Antonio's emotion was overwhelming.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 3. C'è una flottilla intera, Simo. Guarda, se ti abbassi è pieno.
Both on the 23rd and 30th of September, Simona was present.
On that occasion, looking at the flotilla, I was happy to be able to film. In fact, I had a camcorder too. So there were the two of us capturing these objects, and there were so many. It was a great thing. You could feel strong emotions.
Antonio Urzi's ability to spot and film unidentified flying objects of any kind remains unrivaled. The only one that could be compared to him is the Mexican Arturo Robles Hill. In his footage, you can see not only spheres, but also an ebony, a supposedly biological entity expelling the spheres that form flotillas. On the 8th of July 2007, Antonio had already filmed an ebony during a visit to his family in Tuscany.
Come quelli messicani.
No. Sono uguali, Tony.
That time, there were no spheres. He caught them again in 2008.
Guarda che bello. Lo vedi? Che lavori che fa. È un ebony, Simo. Fantastico. Spettacolare.
In 2008, flotillas appeared again. It happened on the 28th of September. That day, the extraordinary traffic in the sky was particularly active.
Un ebony!
First, Antonio filmed a white ebony, then a flotillas, and finally, he sighted another ebony of a spectacular fuchsia color. The object remained very high, but you could clearly see spheres coming out from its interior. The exceptional event has never been filmed in the skies of Italy, while in Mexico, this phenomenon has been widely and clearly documented several times. As in Tuscany, also in Milan, other people, either family members or friends, were present during Antonio's sightings.
Antonio called me and I saw two light spheres close to each other, flying side by side. During another night, there was one on the left side near the mountains with an intermittent light. Then I've seen another sphere of light that was right in front of here, whose light went dimmer and dimmer.
I've had an experience with him in Milan. One afternoon we went for a car drive when he told me, "Look up, see what's there." I tried, but at first I could see nothing. Then I tried to look harder and I spotted a golden disc standing still. I was very excited. I could not believe my eyes, seeing an object like this in the afternoon with a blue sky. In 2003 we started skywatching. We have seen many luminous objects above us, moving acrobatically and jerkily. In 2003, I used to often visit Antonio and Simona's house, and I have seen shiny objects with them.
Thus, beside analyzing Antonio's material, Garofalo has also given a direct testimony of sightings. But there's more to it. They also captured them together. The year 2008 did not just bring flotillas and ebonies in front of Uzzi's camera.
Fermo. Mamma mia.
On the 13th of March, just after 6:30 p.m., Antonio noticed a disc hovering in the sky in front of his window.
Eccolo.
He rushed to get the camera and filmed a new extraordinary exhibition. Just like in previous times, the disc movements were clearly impossible for any conventional terrestrial craft. Sudden stalls, fast changes of direction. The UFO is exactly like the one on the 17th of June 2004, even if darker, probably due to the shooting time difference. In the images, you could start noticing black spots. They were the pixels of the camera that had started to burn off, and that became worse and worse in the following months. At the end, the UFO disappeared to the right with an instantaneous acceleration. On the 26th of August of the same year, Antonio received another emotional visit.
Ciao, eccoli, fratellini.
The disc filmed on the 29th of April 2007 came back. It was even closer, and its maneuvers show even more clearly its extraordinary technical ability. The areas with burned pixels had increased considerably, urging Antonio to change his camera shortly after.
The black pixels have started appearing almost faintly since the first months. And lately they have covered the whole screen.
The shooting is not very steady because of the difficult position in which Antonio was filming. When Ötzi films, he uses the maximum zoom available. On one hand, this makes the object's details more visible, but on the other hand, it does not allow you to appreciate well enough the movements and the context in which the sightings take place.
During those moments, I feel that, witnessing such an event, I try to catch all the details in the best possible way. I don't care about filming a building or an antenna, even if it is of vital importance for the investigation. However, in that moment, the emotion is very high. Such an object, I challenge anyone to not zoom in with the camera.
Only at the end of the video can you notice some buildings of the city. Even if they are very large and close, the objects move in such a silence that Antonio gets astonished all the time.
One thing that impresses me a lot during these sightings of such large objects is the silence in the background. It almost seems a surreal world.
At the end, you see the UFO disappear on the left. Compiling the best frames of the footage, the details of the UFO are visible with great clarity. It has only been a few years since Antonio Ötzi got a camera, and his filmed UFO collection is already very rich. Yet his experience continues.
I believe that this is just the beginning of a story that will amaze the whole world. I'm here for this reason, trying to know it and register it.
The quantity and quality of the documents produced by Antonio Ötzi, the testimony of his family, friends and witnesses, the analysis results on the footage and the opinion of researchers show us that, beside any reasonable doubt, means of non-terrestrial origin are manifesting, and they are getting closer and closer.
At the same time, a great number of sightings take place in different parts of the world, like in Mexico, right? And in Italy and in England too. I think that they're trying to communicate. I think that these intelligences are trying to tell us something, and I want to say it once again. We should try to listen to them.
Many fear that space may bring about a threat, a feeling that some sense when they see images like those of Antonio's.
I'm very sure that inside these objects there are some people, entities that want to transmit just peace and love, because these are the same emotions that I feel when I film.
So, what should we think of cases like this one? An ancient Mayan prophecy announced that, starting from the full solar eclipse, which occurred in Mexico on the 11th of July 1991, the masters of the stars would have started to make contact with the terrestrial humanity. It talks about a change that would have culminated in 2012. Ötzi's films are an extraordinary, fascinating confirmation that something is really happening. To confirm this hypothesis, we must also consider the beautiful Mayan-themed figures which appeared during these years in English fields.
Certainly also the crop circles are part of the signs of change. and I am also certain that Antonio Urzi's experience is part of it. I also reckon that this experience, considering some aspects, is connected to mine. This is mainly due to the reason why these objects, the UFOs, visit our planet in this moment of our history. They are also a sign of change. They announce it, anticipate it. A change foretold by many prophecies like those of the Mayas, but also those of the Christ.
Are we close to a turning point of our age? The signs seem to be here. Will we be wise enough to accept it? In the last few years, unaccountable puzzling events have been taking place on the outskirts of Milan in Italy. Unidentified aircraft hover just in front of the windows of an anonymous house. The phenomenon keeps reoccurring with a high frequency. A young man films them with his camera, producing UFO footage absolutely unique in history. The image quality, the length of the footage, and the different types of objects astonish the experts. What is happening? Who are the mysterious visitors? An extraordinary event that stimulates the interest of experts all over the world. A new enigma to solve. The Urzi case, a mystery in the skies of Italy. It is certainly not very common for people to have the extraordinary experience of spotting and filming a UFO. Even less frequent are those who can do it repeatedly. Antonio Urzi is one of them. The number of objects he has sighted is very large, having collected almost 100 films. Also, it is not just the amount of evidence that makes this case unique in its genre. There is also the unusual closeness of the aircraft, the impressive high quality of the images, and the appearance of multi-shaped UFOs.
Ho filmato molte tipologie di oggetti.
I've been shooting many types of objects, from flying saucers with metal surfaces to spheres, tubular objects, as well as many other types already sighted all over the world.
Antonio got his first camera in August 2003. It was an old analog Video 8 camcorder, good enough to catch the mysterious visitors on tape. Actually, Antonio has been sighting UFOs since he was a child, but only that year he decided to capture them. The first objects he filmed were well-known spheres of light, sighted all over the world and also in space. But soon afterwards, more interesting objects started to appear, like this extraordinary shiny cigar-shaped UFO captured in daylight. Film that resembles other sightings in Italy and abroad. Another well-known type of unidentified objects are the triangular crafts. They became famous throughout the world after the large number of sightings that occurred in Belgium in 1989. As soon as Antonio got his camera, they started appearing almost immediately. In fact, the first footage dates back to October 2003, and it's completely identical to the craft shot in Belgium. Afterwards, Antonio caught them again, filming other videos of very high interest. Where do these objects come from? At that time, the Belgian army declared that they did not exclude the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This statement caused a worldwide sensation. The triangular UFO was chased by fighter planes, but they could do nothing, as the unidentified aircraft passed from 280 to 1,700 kilometers an hour in just 1 second. Such an increase in speed would kill any pilot, because human beings can only tolerate acceleration 5 times less than that. The extraordinary nature of Urzi's experience was evident from the first series of videos, but this was just the beginning. In the following months, the quality of his films improved remarkably.
Since 2004, namely from June, I have been sighting the same metallic objects that I used to see when I was a child.
The fact occurred on the 4th of June 2004. The UFO was very close, definitely metallic. They seldomly come so close to a camcorder. The filmed sequence shows a light sphere circling around the flying saucer. According to the experts, it might be a remotely operated test probe, a rather common element in UFO sightings. According to analysts, the hull should be at least 7 to 9 meters across. Unfortunately, the lack of reference points makes it difficult to calculate the exact dimensions.
Dall'estate del 2003, dal momento in cui acquisto questa videocamera e inizio a filmare, non avevo alcuna intenzione di...
In summer 2003, when I bought the camera and started filming, I did not mean to show my films, as they were meant for my personal records. When these objects appeared so close to me with their metallic surfaces, my only intention was to catch their details. I didn't care at all about filming the surroundings.
It has also to be considered that the position where Antonio films is not very comfortable. Most of the filming is from the small windows on the roof of the small loft where he lives with his fiancée Simona. The sloped windows are pivoted in the middle, and Antonio has worked out a solution to fix the shutters. Moreover, from his small window, he has got a limited view over the sky. So it seems incredible that UFOs may literally pose, making a sort of performance, allowing him to film. However, when an object appears to Antonio all of a sudden, as if it were there for him, he gets so concerned about filming that he just holds the shutters with his own hand. The position makes filming even more difficult. Sometimes, Antonio has got enough time to go to Simona's grandmother's flat, where he can film more comfortably from a small balcony. Meanwhile, the visitors come back for him. It was about 7:30 a.m. when a bronze-like metallic object appeared. There was an unusual silence while Antonio was filming the strange movements of the disc. It's remarkable when the hull tilts so that the bottom clearly mirrors the sun. This phenomenon happened again during the same month. In the new extraordinary video, the object seems to be a cross among the sightings of the American George Adamski, the Swiss Willy Meyer, and the Hispano-American Paul Wheeler. Unlike previously, in this footage there are clouds in the sky, so that one can better appreciate the motion of the craft. The video has also a further reference point, the window frame. At the end, the disc went out of sight, and when Ötzi zoomed out, you can see the small portion of sky where the object revealed itself. Analyzing the frames of this exceptional footage, on the side of the shiny craft, you can notice some dark round areas similar to portholes. Filmed UFO evidence has hardly ever been that sharp. 20 days later, the big metallic discs made themselves evident.
Bellissimo, cavolo.
The maneuvers of the object were like the previous videos, but after a few seconds, it disappeared. Ötzi zoomed out, and the window was visible again.
Dov'è? È andato via.
This time, Antonio had a surprise.
Eccolo. Ma è diverso questo.
As soon as the disc reappeared, it was totally different from before. The footage remained out of focus for a long time, But because of the clouds, the fluctuations of the saucer became clearer. Afterwards, the second UFO disappeared too. A few months elapsed before the reappearance of objects at close range. It was 40 minutes past midnight when he noticed an object that drew his attention.
Troppo bello, amore. Vieni a vedere, corri. È color ambra.
The disk stood out very clearly in the night sky. At a certain moment, much to his surprise, the object started to repeatedly light up with a particular violet light.
Fa le luci viola.
I don't know if this was due to its own light or to a reflection, since you primarily notice the circular shape of the object and this light rotating around the bottom and the top.
An unusual event for UFO footage. About 30 minutes after Antonio zoomed out, and you could see the nearby buildings, an important reference which also shows the setting where the event took place. The UFO had gone very far, yet it remained visible but blurry. The sighting lasted more than 40 minutes, a long and unusual duration for a UFO shooting. 9 days after, exactly at the same time of the previous video, at 0:40 AM, another flying object appeared. The shape was different from all the others he had seen till that moment. The color was bronze amber, and it was more visible than the previous night's UFO.
You can see an amber-coloured object hovering with a very light background due to foggy weather that night.
The bottom of the hull reflected the light of the football field below, and the reflection changed according to the movements of the object. Also, when filming at night, Antonio's film stands out for the clear and detailed pictures. It took only a few days before another metallic disc would go so close to Ötzi's camera. It happened exactly on the 3rd of December 2004. Depending on its position, it reflected the city lights underneath. Its black color was also original. The aircraft carried on its maneuvers in front of the camera for about 5 minutes. This footage closed a year of sightings of the greatest importance. At the time, Antonio used to film when he was not at work.
So it could have been at night, very late in the evening, in the morning before going to work, or in lunch breaks.
The recurrent coincidence of Antonio's spare time with the visitor's appearance is another important element. It suggests that there is an interaction between the phenomenon and the person filming it, an indication of an intelligent and intentional project.
After years of filming, I deduced that these objects clearly intend to make sure that their shapes and features are well visible and detailed. I can figure it out by looking at their motion in the air. We are facing an intelligent phenomenon that wants to interact with us.
Meanwhile, Antonio met the independent researcher Giuseppe Garofalo and became friends with him. He has been the first person to study Antonio's experience, the first to seriously believe and support him. He asked to analyze the films, even though he was convinced of the authenticity of the videos and of Antonio's experience.
trovato che sono genuini e autentici.
I came to the conclusion that they are 100% original and authentic. First of all, the videos have no hint of computer-aided graphic tampering. Moreover, I know very well the background where Antonio films. I know his habits, the instruments and means he uses.
Studying such a unique case, borderline with science fiction, cannot entail just footage and instrumental analysis. It is very important to know also the character's life background, the environment where he was brought up, and the testimony of family and friends. Today, Antonio lives in the suburbs of Milan, but he was born and grew up in Livorno. It is in this Tuscan city that his family still lives, his father, his mother, and his brother. Since Antonio was a child, he used to call his parents as soon as he sighted strange objects in the sky.
I remember his experience started very early. I think he was just 5 or 6 years old when he told me he saw these luminous objects. But sometimes you don't pay attention to a child speaking and may just say, all right, okay, okay. However, this event kept occurring again and again over time.
He spent a lot of time on the balcony with his eyes fixed on the sky, and he used to cry, "I've seen a UFO." But we usually didn't pay very much attention. We thought it was the fantasy of a young boy, that's all.
The phenomena carried on, and since Antonio kept insisting, the family members also started to become aware of the fact that he really saw strange things.
He was on the terrace in the dark and I heard him calling, "Mum, hurry up, come and see." This boy was crying. He was shaken and sweating. "Look, look, look." So we have seen those sort of flotillas that now we see on the television.
"Dad, come out and be quiet," he told me. And I kept silent, even though usually I talk a lot. So he continued, "Look up at the sky." So I did it, and he said, "Be quiet, look over there. You can see those 3 points moving?" I looked at him, then looked up once again, but they had disappeared. Once at home, I thought, man, he must be an extraterrestrial. I know he is my son, but I do not understand what is this strange thing he radiates.
This is the house where I was born. This is the balcony where the first sightings occurred when I was 7, 8 years old. I remember that it was right between those two cranes on the background where we see a small strip of sea. From that point over there, I started to see the first objects coming up, stopping, going from right to left, spheres of several kinds. They came from the sea and stopped right over here.
Antonio's sightings used to happen even when he went out with the whole family.
We went to the seaside in Tirrenia. While we were enjoying ourselves, playing cards or having an ice cream, he looked at the sky all the time. One day he came running towards me saying, "Mum, hurry up, come and see what's here." We were in the parking area with a lot of people and they all saw it and, we were quite shocked.
Vedevo questo disco sopra di me, luminosissimo.
I saw a disc above me, very bright, changing colours and spinning around, making very strange revolutions, passing jerkily from left to right.
A scatti. Questo, attirando la mia attenzione, mi ha portato a urlare, attirare l'attenzione.
It drew my attention, so I started to cry, getting my parents and the other people's attention. I was about 8 years old.
The family's testimony could carry on. However, they confirm that Antonio has always been very sensible since he was young, making him somewhat different from those of the same age. With his aptitude to spot mysterious flying objects strangely connected to him.
Antonio has always been a peculiar boy. He's always mentioned that he sees things. He's always looked awkward to my eyes. I don't know the reason. I don't know what drives him. He says he feels something inside. And when he feels some presence, he just takes the camera and shoots all the time. People may think he is mad, but these are the facts.
The events that Antonio and his family have described are not new for ufology and contact cases. That peculiar sensitiveness, the recurring sightings since an early age, are common elements for other famous contactees.
Emerge il fatto che queste persone hanno avuto o avrebbero avuto.
The fact comes out that these people have had or might have had similar experiences earlier in their life.
Quindi magari o da bambini o anche, diciamo, in epoca comunque precedente.
So it could have happened either when they were children or at an earlier age in which they were not fully aware of what was happening. Possibly only years after the event they could understand it.
Tutto questo dà da pensare, perché potrebbe addirittura far ritenere.
All this makes you wonder, since it suggests that this person could have been chosen somehow to live this kind of experience.
È sicuramente indicativo il fatto che.
Anyhow, it is surely important to consider that even Spielberg dealt with these experiences in the TV series Taken.
The episodes carried on until the age of about 13. At that time, Antonio started to cultivate other interests, and so the phenomena became less frequent. This phase lasted until he was about 22 to 23 years old, when Antonio met a group of ufologists and extraterrestrial enthusiasts in Livorno. In that moment, his passion of youth for the mysterious visitors was restored. He started experiencing again the events that characterized his youth. Antonio felt to go to Valle Benedetta, an area just outside Livorno. Sometimes he went there on his own, other times he involved other people, starting with his brother, Gabriele, even if not everyone shared Antonio's passion for the phenomenon.
When they went to Valle Benedetta, Gabriele used to go too, but he did not take it that seriously. Whereas Antonio did the opposite. He was utterly keen. This is why I've said he was so different from the others, from his schoolmates.
The evening went more or less like this. We got there by car, took position, and maybe after about 5 minutes, 1 or 2 lights would manifest above us. They would maybe come up from the hill and start hovering above us, increasing their luminescence. Then, they would slowly change position with irregular movements, impossible for a conventional plane.
Unfortunately, nobody thought to bring a video camera or photographic equipment.
We haven't thought of bringing camcorders or cameras, as it was something really new for us. I mean that we didn't take the time to consider capturing frames in order to show our experience to the others. There was not even the intention to show any material to anyone, because we felt it as a personal experience.
During skywatching, many people had the chance to experience at first hand the appearance of those unknown aircrafts that Antonio mentioned, even if not everything was so straightforward.
During the period in which there have been many such sightings, I try to involve as many people as possible, like my family and close friends. Unfortunately, though, I have to confess there has been a lot of mockery.
Francisco Vanci Consiglieri is among those friends that at the time used to see the spectacular fluctuations of unidentified visitors with Antonio.
When
Antonio told me about these experiences, I immediately believed him, as we're very close friends. We have always had a strong bond since we were children, I reckon since we were about 5-6 years old. I did experience these kind of occurrences with Antonio. I remember in detail at least 15 events. I often went there in wintertime during that period between 96 and 97.
In inverno ci sono state delle settimane in cui ci recavamo in questo luogo.
There have been periods in which we went there at least twice a week. Although Antonio used to go even more frequently on his own, I didn't go with him all the time.
Fabio Gregori, another friend of Antonio's, lives close to the Valle Benedetta zone. Besides the experiences with Antonio, he has had sightings on his own as well.
La mia esperienza con gli UFO in questo posto è iniziata all'età di 7 anni.
My personal UFO experience in this area started at the age of 7. One summer afternoon, I was sitting about 100 meters from my house on the stairs of a villa of a friend of mine. I was on my own, and when I looked up, I saw a black cigar-shaped object. I immediately thought of an airship, but looking more carefully, I realized it did not really look like that. It had nothing to do with them. That's about it. I told my relatives about this experience. My grandfather told me that they were also around when he was young, and even my great-grandfather would confirm it. The other experience occurred at about 8:45 to 8:50 p.m. in April '83. It was perfectly visible. Also the following experience in 1997, when a silver sphere appeared at 10 minutes to 1.
The peculiarity of Antonio's experiences is the repeatability and the frequency, two elements not occurring in the other cases of sightings.
The experiences that I had in this zone have been totally fortuitous. Actually, following these experiences, I have tried to see another, but I have never. Let's say none has turned up. It was all coincidental.
The whole of Tuscany, and in particular the zone of Valle Benedetta, including the hills near Livorno, as stated by Grigori, were not new to these kinds of manifestations. In fact, researchers had already discovered numerous cases.
Per quanto concerne la Toscana, si tratta di
Tuscany has always been a hot region regarding ufological reports.
Anzi, diciamo che qualcuno ha ritenuto.
Actually, some people suggest that possibly its geographical position within the peninsula and the Tyrrhenian area may have somehow given it a privileged position compared to other Italian zones regarding UFO sightings.
Altre zone finitime.
There are other zones like Valle Benedetta.
Altre aree che tra l'altro costituiscono
other areas representing an important sector.
Tra l'altro abbastanza rilevante per la presenza anche della base NATO americana di Camp.
Due to the Camp Darby NATO base near the Tombola Pinewood in the district of Pisa.
In zona si manifesta.
Additionally, also around that area, a local group called ENU is very active. Basically, it was guided by Mario Bonsignori, who actually carried out a series of investigations in the area and introduced these ufological phenomena to the people in the province. Without his inspection activity, these occurrences would never have been published.
Valle Benedetta fino al Castellaggio.
Valle Benedetta up to Castellazzo is a zone in which many people, during the years from 76 to 83-84, at least as far as I'm concerned, have reported the so-called moving lights. Here they say that people working on it, I know of Sister Nino, Nugola, Colle de Montenero, Castellazzo Romito, Valle Benedetta Cologno, and Limoncino. All these places are locations where some people, common people like farmers, even if they were not aware of each other, told me of these sightings.
The opinions of experts, together with those of Ötzi's family members and friends, describe a picture of an incredible experience within a real context. History, places, and testimonies synchronize to fit these extraordinary episodes into our reality, culminating into Antonio's shocking films. The Mayan calendar is known and studied by dozens of researchers. In fact, many believe that it holds a prophetic message. However, its decoding is not yet complete. The Mayas were convinced that time is cyclic. Every 5,125 years, an era would end, simultaneously opening a new one. Such an event, according to several prophecies, will take place once again on the 21st of December 2012. An important date, in which some reckon that there will be strong changes for mankind and for our planet. What is true about it? Moreover, during the last few years, the mystery has become even more intriguing. On the crop fields, incredible Mayan figures started to appear. Who or what could draw these pictograms with elements that join together past, present, and future? Is it possible that an incredible connection is concealed between the Mayan prophecies and the crop circles?
Intrinsic in many of the patterns, especially the stuff which affects the South and Central American regions, the Mayan patterns, as we spoke about before. Highly interesting stuff, and this points directly to times, a point in our history where things are changing. There's a kind of an evolutionary shift.
A leap of evolution. This is what the Mayas prophesied when referring to the date of 2012. And the appearance of Mayan figures and symbols in wheat fields would suggest that the mysterious architects of the crop circles want to draw our attention to current events and towards the end of this era. Actually, the use of the term prophecy regarding Mayan people is not quite correct. The Mayas, in fact, had identified regular cycles of time occurring in the universe. On the basis of this knowledge, they were able to predict centuries in advance astronomical events of great importance, which would affect the whole of mankind. To calculate these cycles, the Mayas had developed a complex system of calendars that they used in order to synchronize their existence with the flow of events and of cosmic energies. The shorter cycle that they calculated was 52 years long and was obtained through the interaction of two different calendars: the sacred calendar, called the Tzolk'in, and the civil one, called Harb. The Tzolk'in was formed by 13 months of 20 days each, for a total of 260 days, corresponding to the average length of gestation of a human being. The Harb calendar was made up of 18 months of 20 days each, for a total of 360 days. In order to obtain the solar year 365 days long, there was an addition of a 5-day month called Uabe. According to their studies, our solar system undergoes a circular motion toward and away from the center of the galaxy, the Milky Way, which lasts 25,625 years. The Mayas called this cycle Galactic Day and subdivided it into 5 subcycles of 5,125 years each, which they considered as individual eras and were called suns. At the end of each sun, they presumed that a strong energy flow would be generated from the center of the galaxy, causing a strong and unusual solar activity associated with global catastrophes. In fact, in 1997, the SOHO spacecraft detected an energy flow from the center of the galaxy, and a few years later, the Sun entered a very strong activity cycle. This gave scientific support to what had been anticipated by the Mayas.
The Maya civilization knew the behavior of the Sun and knew of its cycles. They knew that during this time, a macro cycle would have ended. I hope they were wrong. But according to what they're telling us, and to what's happening, we can expect a very serious situation with regard to the Sun in the coming years.
Also, the Mayan forecast regarding the energy coming from the center of the galaxy appeared in a crop circle on July the 13th, 1996 in West Kennet. The figure shows the Mayan symbol Hunab Ku, which represents the galactic center. You can clearly see rays coming out of its perimeter. Next to Hunab Ku, there are the crescent moon and a comet. How is this connection possible between the Mayan prophecies and the crop circles? Yet the messages coming from the pictograms are even more accurate. In fact, the astronomical depictions of the crop circles often indicate dates too, and in this case, the sky shown refers to a specific date. According to current knowledge, this layout of the sky should occur in December 2012. Does this perhaps indicate the peak of its energetic intensity? The Mayas remembered that already 4 suns, namely 4 cycles of 5,125 years each, had elapsed since the beginning of the Great Cycle or Galactic Day. Thus, according to their calculations, we are now at the end of the era of the 5th sun, which began on August the 13th, 3114 BC and will end on December the 21st, 2012. During this period, the Mayas predicted new upheavals on our planet and a great spiritual renewal in humans. The survivors.
The other thing is that the law of karma is becoming more powerful. Bad people are being banged. Good people are being rewarded. It's happening more and more. What we think is what we get. And this becomes more and more direct as time goes on, because we are in the middle of this shift. And I think when the shift is complete in 2012, it'll be a completely new planet. I think it's going to hurt, but...
On the 2nd of August 2004 was spotted one of the most beautiful Mayan-styled figures ever to appear. It represents the Mayan calendar of the long count, that is the cycle, or sun, in which we are now, but will end on the 21st of December 2012. It also indicates the eternal cycles of time and of the life-death wheel, the duality. This concept is expressed by the 2 wings at the center of the circle of the Chinese yin-yang symbol. The second figure appeared on the 9th of August 2005. It represents the sacred Mayan calendar, the Tzolk'in, a 260-day long calendar equivalent to the gestation period of a human being. The outside of the circle is composed of 20 elements, while in the inner circle there is a group of 13 bars, repeated 4 times. 13 times 20 is 260. This number corresponds to the days of the sacred Tzolk'in calendar, while 13 times 4 is 52, which is the number of years of a complete Tzolk'in Harb cycle.
Los dos números son importantes.
Both numbers are important. Every 52 years, the 365-day solar calendar and the 260-day civil calendar joined up, starting from the same day, called the New Fire Ceremony. Looking toward the center of this figure, we have a half bow that indicates day 0. It is the day when the Pleiades, the Sun and the Earth line up. And this happens exactly every 20th of May. But in this case, the figure also represents a partial sun eclipse. On the 20th of May 2012, there will be a partial sun eclipse. Therefore, they are indicating a very precise date. They give us both the day and the year, May 20th, 2012.
Surprisingly, 60 days after the spring equinox of the 21st of March 2012, that is precisely May the 20th, 2012, at noon, the sun will be aligned with the Pleiades above the zenith of the Pyramid of Chichen Itza. Are these just coincidences? Why do the creators of the circles want to point out this date? The Pyramid of Chichen Itza was built in honor of the god Quetzalcoatl, or Kukulchan, of which the Mayas and all the South American peoples were waiting for the return. Is this a new reference to the return of the Masters of the Stars? But let's continue to analyze the circle. Opposite to the 0 symbol, there are 2 groups of 8 lances or feathers. 8 plus 8 is 16. Exactly 16 days after day 0, there will be a transit of Venus in front of the Sun, the last one during this century. It is a phenomenon that occurs only twice every 100 years or so and was considered very important by the Mayas, since it coincided with 2 cycles of 52 years of their Tzolk'in Harb calendar. In this case, the transit is even more important because it is the last one for the 3 cycles of 25,625, 5,125 and 52 years, which all end in 2012. Let's go back to Earth. A few days later, exactly on the 13th of August 2005, another pictogram with clear Mayan symbols appeared in a nearby field. It consists of a circle in which a square is inscribed, that in turn contains another circle. This is the representation of the Mayan microcosm-macrocosm, the Hermetic concept of, as on the top, so is it at the bottom. But according to some researchers, the square inside the circle would have an even deeper meaning.
We had a repetition of an a sacred geometry exercise known as squaring the circle. Now, this is very important because the square in time, well, forever, the square is the world, reality, mechanical, solid reality, a linear time, symbolized by a square. And the circle is heaven and God and the divine. So the exercise is to make a square whose perimeter is exactly the same length as the circumference of the circle. And the crop circles have been saying, square the circle, square the circle, square the circle, square the circle.
Thus, squaring the circle means balancing the material and spiritual aspects of life. But let's go back to the pictogram and to the other extraordinary symbolism that it represents. In the middle, we have the Hunab Ku, that besides being a symbol of the Mayan divinity of creation, is also a six-pointed star. That is the monogram of Christ. This could mean an extraordinary identity. Is it possible that what for us stands for the essence of the divinity of creation was the same for the Mayas? Since 2005, which was marked by the two beautiful Mayan pictograms that we have seen, every year a crop circle with symbols clearly referring to this ancient civilization appears. The crop circle on the 15th of August 2006 is the Mayan symbol for Venus. We can therefore deduce that it refers to the end and to the beginning of the new cycle of transits of Venus in front of the Sun, a cycle that is for this century, as indicated in the pictogram on the 9th of August 2005, will end with the transit on June 2012. Therefore, we can say that this figure marks the transition from the old era, or fifth sun, to the new era, or sixth sun, that will begin on Saturday, December the 22nd, 2012. But Venus is also important for another fact. The Mayas were aware that at the end of its cycle of eclipses, the Sun would have manifested and would have spoken. With this, they meant a strong increase of activity of our star. Activity that would have deeply influenced our civilization and our planet.
In their oral tradition, the Mayas handed on indications of how the Sun would have behaved, the fact that all natural systems would have gone out of control. And that is exactly what is happening. Very few astronomers consider the importance of the Sun, but it's the Sun that is causing climate change, more than man himself.
On the 31st of July 2007, NASA found a spot on the Sun that was white instead of black. This indicates that its polarity was reversed compared to a normal spot. Scientists have revealed that this is an anomaly that indicates the beginning of cycle number 24 of solar maxima and of subsequent storms. The highest peaks with an activity of abnormal power are foreseen by the American space body for the years 2010, 2011 and 2012. Exactly when Venus will have completed its cycle of eclipses. The same period in which, as announced by the Mayas, the Sun will talk, that is to say, it will manifest its full power.
The last solar maximum occurred in 2001. The next one is expected between 2011 and 2012. During a normal solar maximum on the surface of our star, there are between 80 and 100 spots. Around 2011 and 2012, they are expected to be between 150 and 180 spots. I mean that there will be a cycle of cycles. This has a serious number of consequences, and global warming goes hand in hand with climate change. In practice, the seasons all over the world are out of phase, reaching every year record peaks of drought or excessive storms. Every year, there are more intense hurricanes, more powerful monsoons affecting even places where they had never occurred before. For instance, what about the hurricane that struck Brazil in 2005? And about the hurricane season in 2005 with Wilma and Katrina? A season in which the climate has become much harsher. There is evidence, many scientifically well-substantiated facts, right?
But the crop circle on the 15th of August 2006 is also the Mayan glyph called Lamat, name and symbol of the 8th day of the sacred Tzolk'in calendar. And it is exactly a Lamat, the day in which begins and ends the period of the Mayan prophecy of the Dresden Code regarding the contact of humanity with the masters from the stars. Also in the Dresden Code, on the last page, the Mayas have depicted an image symbolizing how the end of humanity will happen. You see water flowing from the mouth of a snake, from the sun and from the moon. May it be interpreted as a devastating flood? Water, however, symbolizes also truth, spiritual knowledge, and the sign of the new era is the aquarium, whose symbol is in fact a man pouring water. As already mentioned in the Dresden Code, is prophesied the encounter with the Masters of the Stars. Thus, the water coming out of the snake, from the sun and the moon, and the water in the symbol of Aquarius could have the same meaning. Water of knowledge, truth poured on earth by evolved people coming from the sky. Truth that overwhelms the false concepts with which humanity has been living until now, and that are seriously leading us toward the risk of self-destruction. In the light of these considerations, the crop circles could be seen as a genuine attempt to communicate.
I think this is the first communication. It's not a message. It's a very clever curriculum, very clever agenda, because we have become corrupted and degenerate, and they're returning us to spirit.
In 2007, a new crop circle with Mayan symbols appeared on August the 12th. It was the Mayan number 6, made by a bar and a dot. The dot is the unit, the bar is number 5. A very simple circle that left researchers somewhat disappointed. But following extensive research and analysis of its meaning, irrefutable correlations between the number 6 and the Mayan prophecies were brought to light. The simple pictogram became as important as the Mayan circles from previous years. A few weeks earlier, a circle with Aztec features appeared, indicating August the 18th, 2007, through astronomical symbols. On that date, there would have been a conjunction between the Sun and Venus. The circle with the Mayan 6 appeared on August the 12th. Thus, there were exactly 6 days left to get to the same conjunction indicated a few days before by the Aztec formation. In addition, before the next transit of Venus in front of the Sun on the 6th of June 2012, another 6 conjunctions like this one will occur. An astronomical event announced also by the previous circles, whose meaning we have already analysed. Moreover, if we count from the year of its appearance, we find out that the circle of the Mayan 6 shows also the number of years left to 2012.
Such a 6 is often taken as the symbol for heaven, so we have a heavenly design surrounded by the unity of the one, the oneness. In such a simple design, such a powerful, powerful, powerful message.
In short, a figure far from being simple or random, not only for its meaning. If we look more closely at the pictogram, the concept of paradise described by Gary King emerges also in relation to the Mayas. Within the small circle representing the unity, the layout of wheat forms 13 spirals perfectly highlighted. An important Mayan prophecy is called of 9 hells and 13 heavens. With the 9 hells, the Mayas indicated the period beginning in 1519, the year in which the Spanish conquistadors landed on their shores, and ending in December 2012. From that moment, the 13 heavens will begin. So, the message of the circle might also be the following. 6 more years are to go before the beginning of the period of the 13 heavens. The message that comprises, in fact, was explained by Gary King. The 2008 crop circle season started once more with an extraordinary pictogram linked to the 2012 Mayan prophecy. This connection was not clear at the very beginning. In fact, it did not have the characteristic features of the previous figures. This crop circle appeared in Wiltshire on July the 15th, and it represents the solar system. The dimensions of the planets do not actually respect their real proportions, yet the crop circle highlights the distinction between their internal and external orbits. It is also worth noting the precision with which Pluto's eccentric orbit was represented. As we already said, the crop circle's astronomical configurations indicate specific dates. Following appropriate analysis, it was shown that the planets will only assume these positions in December 2012. So, the link is powerfully evident. The crop circles point once again to this prophetic date of the Mayan calendar. At this point, we could wonder whether there is a relation between the prophecies of this ancient people and some prophetic books much closer to our culture, like the Book of Revelation. As a matter of fact, contents are similar, both speaking about the end of an historical period, of the sufferings of humanity, of traumatic change for our planet, and the coming of a new era, a new kingdom of peace. The Mayas were waiting for the return of their god, Kukulkan, and Christians for Christ's second coming. Daring? Possibly. But on August the 15th, 2008, in the English fields of Wiltshire, a pictogram appeared that left everybody speechless. The image represented was very powerful indeed, a Christian cross. What should we think after this new feat? Counting up the number of circles in the horizontal and vertical arms of the cross and the great circle appearing behind the intersection of the two arms, we reach a total of 13. Does this also refer to the Mayan prophecy of the 13 heavens? We must not forget that this concept of a common spiritual identity already occurred in a previous circle. Historically, this had been already acknowledged by the first missionaries who accompanied the conquistadors. In fact, they had the chance to know the Mayan religion. Unfortunately, they considered it a creation of the devil who wanted to confuse them, so they destroyed this precious cultural heritage. Fortunately, today we are possibly more open to such a hypothesis. We should also recall that in Palenque, the ancient Mayan city where the renowned King Pacal's sepulchral stone stands, there is a temple called Temple of the Cross, where this symbol is depicted.
I think that we finally got to a conclusion. That's to say, they finally identified themselves by using a symbol that has an immense value for the whole of humanity. It has no need of many explanations, as it's a symbol that everybody in the world can recognize. Not only the Christians, who obviously understand its importance, but even lay people know about it. They are saying, it is us. We are these beings, and, whether you like it or not, we are connected to Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ intended not just the Christian religion, because this way we would discriminate against Islam and Buddhism. Jesus Christ is actually intended as a bearer of a universal message. That's to say, we are connected to the values of love, peace, brotherhood and justice that this man, who died on the cross for all of you, does represent.
We could still carry on describing further data and symbols related to the knowledge and prophecies of the Mayas, which have appeared in the extraordinary English crop circles. Could the Mayas really predict future events? Do these warnings have a real foundation? Now, even scientists confirm that the Earth is a living entity, a complex organism. The message coming from the ancient Mayas and modern crop circles appears to be the same. A change of conscience is absolutely necessary, as never before in human history. A message of warning and hope coming from a past whose importance is hardly being recognized.
Es curioso que ahora está ocurriendo.
It is funny that now it's happening, exactly what has been announced. Changes are predicted, and it seems that they are actually taking place. Thus, looking at our old generations or ancient civilizations as if they were less developed and therefore inferior to us is wrong. They were as intelligent as we are, or even smarter. After the tsunami in 2005, NASA checked on March 21st, 2005, and recorded with absolute precision the spring equinox from Chichen Itza. Why? Because they did not possess a single tool that allowed them to determine the position of the sun with the same accuracy with which it is measured at Chichen Itza. So we see that not only modern science accepts the phenomenon, but it even needs it. This means that not only does it accept the fact that these ancient civilizations had a very precise knowledge, but they are even taking advantage of it. Therefore, considering this, I suggest that we should begin to respect the ancient civilizations.
And this is what the creators of the pictograms did. Whether human or alien, they amplified the message coming from the cultures of the past, such as the Mayas, through a fascinating symbolism beautifully engraved on the wheat fields of England.
It is funny that now it's happening, exactly what has been announced. Changes are predicted, and it seems that they are actually taking place.
This is the best footage and most comprehensive footage available of when the crop circle takes.
I think this is the first communication.
This points directly to times, a point in our history where things are changing.